Have you ever had one of those quiet nights where everything slows down, the noise fades, and suddenly your mind starts replaying moments you thought were long gone, and you feel the strange, heavy realization creeping in that maybe, just maybe, the people you trusted your entire life don't feel the same way about you anymore. Or worse, maybe they never did in the way you believed. And that thought right there, it doesn't come loudly. It doesn't knock on your door. It just slips in quietly and sits beside you. And before you even realize it, your peace is gone. And here's the truth nobody really tells you when you're younger. Because when you're building a life, raising kids, chasing stability, you don't have time to question these things. You assume family is your foundation, your safe place, your forever support system. But as the years pass and you cross into your 60s, your 70s, something begins to shift. Not always dramatically. Sometimes it's subtle, almost invisible, but it's there. And if you're not paying attention, it can slowly take away something you worked your entire life to protect, your inner peace. And I wish someone had sat me down years ago and told me this straight. No sugarcoating, no polite lies. Just the truth. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't about drama, it's not about blaming anyone. It's about understanding the hidden dynamics that quietly shape your later years. Because the biggest mistake I made was assuming that time automatically strengthens family bonds. But that's not always true. Sometimes time just buries things deeper. And those buried things don't disappear, they grow roots. And one day they come back in ways you never expected. Like realizing that closeness can be an illusion. You spend decades celebrating holidays together, sitting at the same table, laughing at the same jokes. And from the outside, it looks perfect. But inside, there's distance, emotional distance. The kind you can't measure, but you can definitely feel. And one day you reach out. Not for money, not for help. Just for understanding. And the response you get feels empty, polite, but empty. And that's when it hits you. You can be surrounded by family and still feel completely alone. And that realization doesn't just hurt. It shakes something deep inside you. Because it forces you to question years of memories. And then there's something even more complicated. Something that doesn't show up in conversations, but lives in the spaces between them. Unspoken resentment, the kind that builds slowly over years. Maybe from misunderstandings, maybe from things said in anger decades ago, maybe from expectations that were never met. And nobody talks about it because everyone wants to keep the peace on the surface. But beneath that surface, emotions are still there, unresolved. And you start noticing little things. The way someone avoids eye contact, the tone that feels slightly off, the conversations that stay shallow, no matter how much time passes. And you begin to realize that not every smile means warmth. Not every visit means connection, and that awareness can be deeply unsettling. Because it leaves you wondering where things went wrong, and whether they can ever be fixed. And just when you think you understand your family, another layer reveals itself. Money, something so practical, so necessary, yet so powerful it can quietly change everything. Because when financial matters enter the picture, whether it's inheritance, property, or even small decisions about support, people start acting differently, sometimes subtly, sometimes in ways that are impossible to ignore. And it's not always obvious greed. Sometimes it's disguised as concern, as logic, as fairness. But underneath it, priorities shift. And suddenly, relationships feel transactional. And that's a hard reality to accept. Especially when you've spent your life believing that family operates on love, not calculation. And then comes one of the most painful realizations of all. The moment you start feeling like a burden. And it doesn't always come from something someone says directly. It's often in the hesitation, the slight delay before someone agrees to help, the change in tone. The way conversations become shorter, less engaged, and you start thinking twice before asking for anything, even something small. And that thought, that feeling of being too much, it can quietly break something inside you, because no one wants to feel unwanted, especially not by the people they've given so much to. And yet, this is a reality many people face but rarely talk about, because it's uncomfortable, it's painful, and it challenges the very idea of what family is supposed to be. And if you've ever felt even a hint of this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That quiet question in your mind, do I still belong here the same way I used to? And that question alone is enough to disturb your peace in ways you can't easily explain. And the truth is, these feelings don't come from one big moment. They come from a series of small, almost invisible shifts that build over time. And by the time you recognize them, they've already changed how you see everything around you. And the hardest part is not knowing whether to confront it, ignore it, or simply accept it as part of life. And that uncertainty, that constant internal debate, can be exhausting, because you're not just dealing with your present, you're also carrying the weight of your past and trying to make sense of it all at once. And just when you think you've reached the deepest layer of it all, something even more subtle begins to surface. Something that traces back years, even decades. Favoritism. A word that feels almost childish at first. Something you think belongs in childhood. Something you assume fades with age. But it doesn't. It simply evolves, becoming quieter, more refined, less obvious, but still present. And when you notice it later in life, it hits differently. Because now you have the awareness to see it clearly, and the memory to connect it to moments from your past. And suddenly, you're not just experiencing what's happening now. You're reliving old feelings, old comparisons, old wounds that never fully healed. And that emotional weight can be surprisingly heavy, because it's not just about fairness. It's about feeling seen, valued, equally important. And when that balance feels off, even slightly, it can create a sense of distance that's hard to ignore. And then there's communication, or rather, the lack of real communication. Because families talk, of course they do. They exchange updates, share news, discuss daily life. But how often do they truly communicate? How often do they sit down and talk about what really matters? Fears, regrets, emotions, misunderstandings. The things that actually shape relationships. And the truth is, those conversations are often avoided. Not because people don't care, but because they're uncomfortable. They require vulnerability, honesty, sometimes even confrontation. And so instead, silence takes over. And that silence creates space for assumptions. And assumptions, more often than not, are wrong. But they still influence how we feel, how we react, how we interpret every little interaction. And before you know it, you're responding not to reality, but to a story your mind has created. And that can slowly erode your peace in ways that are difficult to reverse. And then comes perhaps the most powerful force of all, expectations, the invisible standards we hold for the people we love, the way we believe they should act, the way we hope they will show up for us, the way we imagine our relationships will feel. And there's nothing wrong with expectations in themselves. They're natural. They come from love, from hope, from experience. But when reality doesn't match those expectations, disappointment follows, and when that disappointment happens repeatedly, it doesn't just fade away, it builds, turning into frustration, then into distance, and eventually into emotional withdrawal. And that's where peace begins to slip away. Not in a dramatic explosion, but in a quiet, gradual shift that changes how you feel about everything. And the hardest part is realizing that much of this isn't intentional. People aren't always trying to hurt you. Sometimes they're just living their own lives, dealing with their own struggles, unaware of the impact their actions or inactions have on you. An understanding that can be both comforting and frustrating at the same time, because it doesn't erase the feeling. It just explains it. And so the question becomes, what do you do with all of this? How do you protect your peace in the middle of these complex, often unspoken dynamics? And the answer isn't simple. It doesn't come in a quick fix or a single decision. It's something you build consciously, step by step, starting with awareness. Recognizing these patterns for what they are, not exaggerating them, not ignoring them, just seeing them clearly. Because once you see them, you gain a certain kind of control, the ability to choose how much weight you give them, how much influence they have over your emotions. And then comes acceptance, not the kind that means giving up, but the kind that frees you from constantly trying to change what you can't control. Understanding that people are who they are, not who you wish they would be. And that acceptance can be incredibly powerful, because it reduces the gap between expectation and reality. And in that reduced gap, there's less room for disappointment to grow. And alongside acceptance, there's the importance of communication, even if it feels awkward, even if it feels overdue, expressing your thoughts, your feelings, your perspective, not with the goal of changing others, but with the goal of being honest with yourself. Because unspoken emotions don't disappear, they stay inside, shaping your experience whether you acknowledge them or not. And beyond all of that, there's something even more essential: building your own sense of emotional independence, creating a space within yourself where your peace doesn't depend entirely on how others behave, where your sense of worth isn't tied to how often someone calls, visits, or expresses appreciation. And that doesn't mean disconnecting. It means strengthening your inner stability so that external changes don't shake you as deeply. And finally, there's the idea of protecting your energy, being mindful of where you invest your attention, your time, your emotional effort, because not every situation requires your full involvement. Not every dynamic needs to be fixed. Sometimes the most powerful choice is to step back, to observe without absorbing, to care without losing yourself in the process. And when you begin to live this way, something shifts, not in your family, not necessarily in your circumstances, but in you. And that internal shift, that quiet reclaiming of your peace, is what truly makes the difference. Because at the end of the day, peace isn't something others can consistently provide. It's something you create, protect, and carry within yourself, regardless of what's happening around you. And if there's one thing worth holding on to after everything you've lived through, everything you've experienced, it's that. The understanding that your peace is still yours to define, yours to protect, and yours to keep. Before you walk away from this, pause for a moment and really ask yourself something honestly. How much of your peace are you quietly handing over to other people without even realizing it? And how long have you been doing that? Because the truth is, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, through years of expectations, emotional habits, and the belief that family will always meet you where you are. But life doesn't always work that way. And if there's one powerful shift you can make starting today, it's this: stop waiting for perfect understanding, perfect behavior, or perfect love from others before you allow yourself to feel at peace. Because that kind of waiting can stretch for years and leave you feeling empty without ever truly resolving anything. Instead, begin to take back control in small but meaningful ways. Start by noticing what triggers your discomfort, not to blame anyone, but to understand your own emotional patterns. Because awareness is where real change begins. Then gently lower the expectations that keep hurting you. Not in a way that makes you cold or distant, but in a way that protects your emotional balance. Understand that people often give what they are capable of, not necessarily what you need. And while that may not feel fair, accepting it can save you from constant disappointment. At the same time, don't silence yourself. If something matters to you, express it calmly and clearly, not with the pressure of forcing change, but with the intention of being honest, because your voice deserves space too. And if it's not received the way you hoped, let that inform your boundaries rather than break your spirit. And speaking of boundaries, this is where many people struggle the most, especially when it comes to family. But boundaries are not rejection, they are protection. They define where your energy goes and how much of it you're willing to give. And learning to say, "This is enough for me," without guilt can be one of the most freeing things you'll ever experience. Beyond that, begin to build a life within yourself that doesn't rely entirely on external validation. Invest in your own routines, your own thoughts, your own sense of fulfillment, whether it's through reflection, learning, connection with people who truly understand you, or simply spending time doing things that bring you quiet satisfaction. Because the stronger your inner world becomes, the less power external situations will have over your peace. And don't forget the importance of forgiveness. Not the kind that excuses everything or pretends nothing happened, but the kind that releases you from carrying emotional weight that no longer serves you. Forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. It's a way of saying, "I'm not letting this control me anymore." And finally, remind yourself often that your peace is not a reward you earn after fixing everyone else or solving every family issue. It is a right you have in this moment, regardless of what others do or don't do. And choosing that peace doesn't mean you love any less. It simply means you respect yourself enough to live the rest of your life without carrying burdens that were never yours to hold in the first place. So move forward with awareness, with strength, and with the quiet confidence that you are allowed to protect what matters most, your peace.